Hello, how are you today? Are you okay? I'm also very well. Back here again, to talk about sports. Today is the day we want to talk about baseball. As you saw on the screen before, we're going to devote our lesson today to talking about baseball, our national sport. But before we go into baseball, I'd like to check the homework that we left in our previous lesson. Let's now come to the screen, and I'm going to show you here on the screen the homework that was left in our lesson before. The activity was the following. You had to complete by adding a suitable result to certain conditions that I gave you, right? So then, the first one was, if you bend down, you can become more flexible. This is one answer. I mean, it's a possible answer. Yo estoy dándole aquí respuestas posibles a la tarea que dejamos en la clase anterior. Usted puede haber tenido otra similar a esta, que no quiere decir que esté incorrecta, right? So then, I'm going back to the screen and I'm going to show you now some possible answers to the homework I left in our previous lesson, right? So number one again is, if you bend down, you can become more flexible. You can become more flexible. Look at the underlined, let's say, parts of the sentences. And they use can or will. These are possible, ways to complete the conditionals here by using can and will. So once again, if you bend down, you can become more flexible. Number two is, if you do push-ups, you can build your arm muscles, all right? This is language we taught before in this course. So all you had to do was just put this language into practice, into actual communication in sentences. Number three, if you do sit-ups, your abdomen will tune up. We taught here the meaning of tune up, and we also talked about some other meanings it has. So again, push-ups and sit-ups, these are two kinds of exercises that people get when they want to warm up or they just want to get fit, physically fit. So number four on the screen is, if you jump the rope, you will get warmed up. You know this expression, to jump the rope, saltar la suiza. If you jump the rope, you will get warmed up. That's number four. Another example using will. And number five, if you do chin-ups, your arms will get stronger. So I'm giving you here conditions, and what you had to do was just, to complete that with a suitable result. I mean, what may happen if, we discussed here in our previous lessons the use of if and conditionals in English in the field of sports. All right? So these were five, the five answers to the first activity you were given in our previous lesson. I want to give you now a few seconds to finish copying that. Maybe 30 seconds will be okay. Come on. 30 segundos para copiar esas posibles respuestas para si alguien no la pudo hacer en su casa. Adelante. So that was the first task you were given in our previous lesson. Now I'm going to go to the second one, in which you were supposed to use the modal verb must. All right? Here it goes. So you had to use must also to complete these expressions using if. So if you want your body to be flexible, okay, then you must bend down. And look at this. We're not here, let's say, talking about conditions, real conditions, because this if here is not introducing anything, that would establish, would make you think that we are now setting a condition for anyone. But just maybe you're talking about advice, all right? Advising someone, what to do if this person wants to get a certain result. So if you want your body to be flexible, you must bend down. It's about the same activity as before, but maybe from a different angle, looking at it from a different perspective. Number 2 is if you want your arms to get stronger, you must do chin-ups or push-ups. Once again, these are only possible answers. I mean, you may want to say something else, and maybe that is also correct. It is impossible for us to give you all the possible options, because then it would take, the whole lesson for us to give you all the information you may probably provide, to answer your tasks. Number 3, if you want your abdomen to tune up, you must do sit-ups. So it's only advised that you give someone. Usually you would use should, but you can also use must when this implies a stronger obligation. All right? Number 4, if you want your waist to be flexible, remember the word waist, cintura. If you want your waist to be flexible, you must bend down. That's another kind of exercise that people, do in order to get flexibility in their body, right? And number 5 is the last one, is if you want a good basketball team. Remember we showed you here a picture of a very tall basketball player in our previous lesson. And we also gave you language that you could use to talk about, height and the like. So if you want a good basketball team, you must look for tall players. That's modern basketball. If you don't have tall players, you're not going to get good results. You may have exceptions, like in every sport. Maybe a player who's not very tall may play very well, but the team in general should have a very, high average in terms of, athletes' height. So then, this is basically the homework. I'm sure you were able to do it because, we worked with this lengthy in our previous lesson. And now, I'm going to go to the topic of today's lesson. That was, again, talking about baseball. Maybe you remember in some of our previous lessons, a few, let's say, weeks ago, maybe months ago, there was a character called Bill Johnson. Bill Johnson was a foreigner who came to Cuba, and we saw him in different places in Havana, even, looking for a taxi at a hotel, in many places. But today, Bill Johnson will be asking his friend Carlos, who's Cuban, about baseball in Cuba. And let's look at the screen now. This is a general information about what's going to happen now in our lesson. It's Bill Johnson who asks his Cuban friend Carlos about baseball in Cuba. Think about what kinds of questions people would ask a Cuban about baseball. Somebody who lives in a country in which baseball is not played as it is in our country, they may have a lot of questions about baseball, about good players, about the rules of the sport, about our national championships. So there's a lot of things that people would, want to know about this sport, which is, again, our national sport in Cuba. Let's look now at the first part of the conversation between Bill and Carlos. All right? I want you to now read, but at the same time, why not copy this information? Because I think you're going to find it useful to learn new words about sports in general, and more specifically about baseball. Let's see. Bill asks, he says, I understand baseball is your favorite sport in Cuba. I understand. Ahí no dice yo entiendo. Sería el equivalente al español si usted lo va a traducir. Tengo entendido que. That would be the equivalent here. We know that understand means comprender, but in this context here, when I say I understand and then you have this other phrase after it, then what you are implying is tengo entendido que. So I understand baseball is your favorite sport in Cuba. He's sort of asking for information, though he's not asking a question as such, right? And then Carlos would answer, yes, it is. Almost every Cuban knows how to play baseball. Do you agree with that? I think so. Almost everyone here in Cuba knows how to play baseball. And even if you don't know how to play it, you know some of the rules, governing this sport, so that you understand baseball when it is played on television, weekly. So then, it is played, and there you have an underlined, expression. It is played in every park. We know that. Every park, even on the streets. It is played in every park, and there are baseball teams in every school in the whole country. So maybe you remember when we talked about Usain Bolt a few lessons ago, and we said that there are national championships of athletics for children in Jamaica. The same happens in Cuba with baseball. That's why we have so many teams and we have so many good baseball players in our country, right? So then once again, it is played, y está subrayado porque es un ejemplo de voz pasiva que abordaremos en unos segundos. It is played in every park and there are baseball teams in every school in the whole country. En todo el país completo, right? In the whole country. And then Bill, now he has a question. And the question is like this. How long is your national series? National series, la serie nacional. Similar, just the same as in Spanish, but in a different order. How long is your national series? And the answer is, well, it's rather long. Es bastante larga. Rather means here bastante. It's rather long. It takes more than 7 months, including the playoff with the 8 teams qualifying after the round robin. And here we have some language that maybe you do not know. And I'm going to begin from the last part of the sentence. The round robin. Round robin is a system of competition in which all the teams, play against all the other teams. So we call them in Spanish un todos contra todo. That's a round robin. Importante que lo copien, porque es vocabulario que ustedes van a seguramente a usar o van a entender cuando se habla incluso en español. Algunos locutores dicen el round robin, se está hablando de eso. Es un sistema de todos contra todos. It's what we call the round robin in English, which is opposed to a single elimination system, which is a different thing. Okay? So when we are doing the round robin, all the teams play against all the other teams. When you finish the round robin and you go to the playoff, we do have then a single elimination event, which is if you lose, your match against another team, then you're out. And then the team that wins the match, this team goes on till the finals, all right? So let's read again. I understand baseball is your favorite sport in Cuba. Yes, it is. Almost every Cuban knows how to play baseball. It is played in every park, and there are baseball teams in every school in the whole country. Then Bill he asks, how long is your national series? And Carlos answers, well, it's rather long. It takes more than 7 months, including the playoff with the 8 teams qualifying after the round robin. So this is information for the first part. Now I want to deal with passive voice again. We have seen here in this section of the course devoted to sports that we've been talking about and we've been using passive voice a lot. I'm going to show you now some more examples of it. So baseball is played, as you had in the text, in the dialogue, baseball is played in every park in Cuba. That's an example here. How do we know it is passive voice? It is because we have the verb to be is plus the past participle of the verb play, which is played. In the second example, baseball games are broadcast live on TV every day. And look at the word broadcast. Broadcast is a verb which is irregular. It's the same form for the present, for the past, and for the participle, all right? Broadcast, present tense, broadcast, past tense, and also broadcast in its participle form. After the word broadcast, which means transmitir, o sea, los juegos de pelota se transmiten, hablamos hace unos días del uso de una estructura del español que es la llamada pasiva con C, o sea, se coloca el C delante y decimos entonces los juegos de béisbol se transmiten en vivo, and that's the meaning of the word live. Usted dirá, pero si yo conozco esa palabra es el verbo vivir y se pronuncia y live, es verdad, pero tiene otro significado. Usted dice live y dice live, se escribe igual, significados diferentes. Vamos a ponerlo en pizarra para que se den cuenta. Okay? Live is what you know very well. Vivir is a verb in English. To live. All right? But then when we're talking about things that we see, with the people there, like a concert or a game that is broadcast on television, then we're using the word live, which has the same spelling but different pronunciation and of course different meaning. All right? Again, same spelling, la misma ortografía, se escriben igual las palabras, but they have different meanings and of course, as we can see here on the board, they have different pronunciations. All right? So live and live. In this case, In the example we have on the screen, we're using the word live. Okay? Good. So then, baseball games are broadcast live on television every day. Number 3, the playoff, y se pronuncia off, así, off, una O y una F, no hay que complicarse mucho para pronunciarlo. Incluso cuando lo queremos decir en español, no hay que complicar mucho esa pronunciación, simplemente hacerla parecida a nuestro idioma. So the playoff is followed by everyone. Todo el mundo sigue, ¿verdad? El playoff, o sea, la serie extra esa que se hace para ganar el campeonato. And then number 4, the Cuban team is chosen at the end of the national championships and is announced on television. The Cuban team is chosen, se selecciona. El equipo cubano se selecciona, o también puede decir es seleccionado, at the end of the national championships and is announced on television. So these are some, let's say, examples of the use of the passive voice in English. Now talking about baseball. Let's now continue with the conversation between Carlos and Bill. And then Bill has another question. Bill's next question is like this. How is your national team made? Okay, we have here information about the national team, how it is made. He's asking, ¿cómo se hace el equipo nacional? And we know a lot about this. Every Cuban believes that he or she has the right to make his or her own national Cuban team. You know, because we think we know a lot about baseball. Since we can see baseball on television on a daily basis, then we think we have all the information allowing us to make our own national team. But the question here has to do with how it is actually made. I mean, and then we have the answer. So the team is made or just based on the player's performance. Simplemente se basa en, o sea, la conformación del equipo. Y fíjense que la pregunta que hace Bill es una pregunta en voz pasiva. Viene en el ordenamiento how y después viene is, que es el verbo ser o estar, que me está diciendo a mí que estamos en voz pasiva si tiene al final un verbo en el pasado participio. So, how is your national team made? O sea, ¿cómo se hace el equipo nacional? Nadie dice en español cómo es el equipo nacional hecho, porque eso no lo dice nadie. Pero ese es el ordenamiento de las palabras del inglés. Nosotros hemos explicado en muchas ocasiones en el curso que la sintaxis, es decir, el orden de las palabras en una oración o en este caso en una pregunta, es en muchos casos diferente al ordenamiento de las palabras en el español. Por eso que ustedes verán cuando demos dentro de unos días las clases que vamos a dedicar algunas técnicas para comprensión de texto con el objetivo de traducir, que nosotros vamos a hacer énfasis también en el ordenamiento de las palabras que cambia de una lengua a la otra y que no podemos traducir palabra por palabra porque en muchos casos el significado que se obtiene no va a ser el deseado. Eso nos pasa también cuando vamos a una computadora, ponemos un texto en un idioma y queremos que el traductor de la máquina nos haga la traducción a la lengua que queremos llegar, y en muchas ocasiones, si se trata de palabras que tienen más un significado, ese traductor no puede identificar exactamente en qué contexto se está usando la palabra, y a veces la traducción no es del todo precisa. Okay? So then, the answer is just based on the player's performance in the national championship. Performance, I think we know already what it means. I think you know already what it means. Rendimiento. All right? We often make a team of 20 players. Son equipos de 20. Una época que eran de 20, ahora los hacen de otro tamaño, pero para el equipo nacional son menos que para los equipos de las series nacionales. We often make a team of 20 players, usually including 3 catchers, 6 infielders, 4 outfielders, and 7 pitchers. This is the basic structure of a team, of a baseball team. The number of players. Of course, you may find a different distribution of players in any team. It doesn't have to be like this. It's only what is probably most common when you have a 20-player team. All right. So then, I'm going to teach you now the names of the different players in a team. I mean, how you will call or what you will call a player in a team, in a baseball team. This is the terminology you're going to learn how to use now. So, if you look at the screen now, you're going to find 2 Cuban players, 2 wonderful Cuban players, a pitcher from Pinar del Rio, Pedro Luis Lazo, and there you have a catcher from Villa Clara. Okay? I think you know him very well. So we have a pitcher and we have a catcher, both of them here. All right? So the pitcher is the one who pitches the ball, and the catcher is the one who catches the ball. To pitch and to catch. Hay una relación aquí entre verbo y sustantivo. ¿Ok? Relación verbo-sustantivo. El verbo pitch, and the person who pitches the ball is the pitcher. And then when you have the verb to catch, the person who catches the ball that is pitched by the pitcher is the catcher. It sounds like maybe a tongue twister, but it is not, all right? Parece como un trabalengua, ¿verdad? So, the catcher is the player who catches the ball that was pitched by the pitcher. All right? Very good. Okay, so we have pitchers and catchers. And these are some of the players belonging or who compose a baseball team. I'm sure you know these words because they're similar to the way we pronounce them in Spanish. But the terms in Spanish come from English. Pitcher y catcher, o el catcher, como muchas personas dicen, esas son palabras que vienen del inglés, como explicamos en la primera clase que dedicamos a este tema del deporte. All right? So then we have the infielders. Infielders son los jugadores de cuadro. The infielders, and we have here just one player here who may be a shortstop or maybe a second baseman. Why not? So these are the players, the first baseman, the second baseman, the third baseman, and the shortstops. Okay, so these are the 4 players we have in the infield in a baseball game. All right? So I'm sure you were able to jot down or to copy the names of these positions in the baseball team already. All right? Good. And now we have a very exciting picture. The next picture has to do with, is a picture of a player trying to catch a ball that is trying to clear the fence. So we have a ball here, back there, probably in the center field, maybe. And as you can see behind the player, this is a picture taken during the Olympic Games in Beijing, 2008. That's clear in the picture, all right? So this outfielder, los llamados jardineros en español nuestro de Cuba, the outfielders, we have 3. We have the left fielder, jardinero izquierdo, we have the center fielder, and the right fielders. All right, so there are 3 types of fielders, of outfielders in a baseball team. So far, I have, given you the names of the 4 main areas in which you would place your players in a team: pitchers, catchers, infielders, and outfielders. But there are some other functions that a player may have in a game, which doesn't have to be only a defensive position, but has to do with, batting or hitting the ball. And that's why I'm going to show you now 2 more terms which are very important to know in baseball. One of them is the designated hitter, okay? El llamado bateador designado is a designated hitter. Is a player who bats for the pitcher. The pitchers, they're so focused on their pitching, like say, activity in the game that they do not have the time to probably get trained to hit the ball, successfully. And for that reason, many years ago, I would say it was more than 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, the bodies governing baseball internationally, they came up with the idea of having the so-called designated hitter, somebody who would come and hit or bat the ball, hit the ball, replacing the pitcher. And then this competitor cannot play a defensive position while he is acting as a designated hitter. Okay? I'm sure you know all this in Spanish because, all of you, watching today's lesson, I'm sure you know about baseball maybe more than I do. But what I'm doing here is just, putting all the information you may know in Spanish, into this perspective of a foreign language in which you are learning how to say or how to understand people when they're talking about baseball in English. All right? So then, that's a designated hitter. And next is the pinch runner. Pinch es como el sustituto. Sometimes at the end of a game, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. At the end of a game, a team is losing the game, but all of a sudden, the last inning, the 9th inning, there comes a very bulky player, a big one, and he hits the ball, and maybe it's a double or just a hit, and he comes to first base or second base, but he's too slow as a runner. And then the team, of course, wants to have a run. And for that reason, they bring another runner, another player who is faster, running around the infield. And then this player replaces, this one who hit the ball. And then that's the so-called pinch runner. El corredor sustituto, somebody who comes and replaces the player who hit the ball. Maybe you want to copy this. I want to give you now a few seconds to finish copying this information because I think it's important. So again, copy. Now I'm going to talk about another important aspect in baseball, and that has to do with acronyms. That is the use of these, letters that represent a larger word. And we're going to see now some examples of it. But before we go into that, or while we do so, I want to talk about a term that is very common in baseball, which is at bat. Let's come to the screen now and watch this. At bat, AB, or times at bat, it's the same thing. Veces al bate, eso son un término muy de béisbol, and I'm going to talk about it in English now. Usted dirá, nos están dando un curso de deporte, es un curso de inglés. Yo quiero explicarle algo porque, aunque pudiera ser que algunos de ustedes tengan la preocupación de qué es lo que ha estado pasando en las últimas clases que hemos dedicado al deporte y las clases que nos quedan. La enseñanza de una lengua extranjera no se puede hacer en abstracto, no se puede hacer solamente a partir de los elementos aislados de la lengua, sino que hay que contextualizar esa información en determinadas áreas del conocimiento. Y se habla mucho en la enseñanza de lenguas extranjeras en los últimos años acerca de la enseñanza basada en el contenido, es decir, un contenido. Usted está hablando de un tema específico, utiliza la lengua extranjera y la persona que está escuchando va aprendiendo la lengua a partir de que lo puede enmarcar en un contexto específico de la comunicación. Y es lo que estamos tratando de hacer, términos que son propios de la lengua, o sea, del lenguaje, de la jerga del béisbol o de otros deportes en general, pero también estamos aprovechando para enseñarles a ustedes estructuras gramaticales, retomar algunos elementos de gramática que ustedes han recibido en cursos anteriores, como por ejemplo el caso de la voz pasiva, el uso de los modales, y ustedes se van a dar cuenta que aunque estamos hablando mucho de deporte, pero siempre el idioma está ahí, para que usted no solamente se apropie de los términos propios del deporte, sino que también refresque los conocimientos de gramática, de pronunciación, elementos generales de la lingüística relacionados con la lengua inglesa, que le van a ser muy útiles también para no solamente su aprendizaje del inglés, sino también en su vida en general. Vamos entonces a regresar aquí. And then, every time a player faces a pitcher, that's what we call at bat. Every time a player faces a pitcher, to face, enfrentar. Every time, you know that. If you don't know that now, I'm sorry, I won't tell you, right? So then, however, a batter gets no time at bat when. Fíjense aquí, however, sin embargo, hay momentos en el que el jugador se para frente al pitcher, el bateador, y no se le cuenta como ves al bate. Y ustedes saben de qué estoy hablando porque saben de béisbol seguramente mucho. So then, here we have some situations in which a batter or a hitter, whoever, does not get a time at bat, and that is when, number one, he receives a base on balls. BB, base on balls. Similar to Spanish, base on balls, the BB. Okay? Or he just, he's given a walk. He can walk to the first base because, he got 4 balls, and for that reason, he's allowed to come to first base without, hitting the ball. So that's it. He receives a base on balls. When that happens, this time you were facing the pitcher does not count as a time at bat. Number 2, when he's hit by a pitch, the so-called dead ball. All right? Here we have HBP, hit by a pitch. So the player, or the batter, is trying to hit the ball, and all of a sudden he gets hit by the ball. So then he can also go to first base. It's a so-called dead ball, but in this case, in terms of statistics in baseball, it is called an HBP. That is, a player that was hit by a ball. Then number 3, he hits a sacrifice fly or a sacrifice hit or bunt. What's the meaning of bunt? Bunt es un toque. Un toque son los llamados sacrificios de fly o sacrificio o toque de sacrificio. Then we have the information in English here, okay? So number 3, he hits a sacrifice fly or a sacrifice hit or bunt. Bunt is the word we use in English para el toque de bola. Okay? New word for you, a new word for you, which we don't use in Spanish. In our Spanglish, when we talk about baseball, we don't use the word bunt. Do we? No, I don't think we do. So number 4, another situation in which he's not giving a time at bat is when he's awarded first base due to interference or obstruction, usually by the catcher. Son términos muy parecidos al español. Interference or obstruction, usually by the catcher. And number 5, when the inning ends while he is still at bat. Somebody is caught out somewhere, maybe while running, from first base to second base, and then the inning is over, and then this player, is still facing the pitcher. Then the inning is over, and then that is not considered to be a time at bat. So these are some situations in which a player does not get a time at bat. Maybe you want to copy this language. Maybe you want to learn. So I'm going to give you now another 30 seconds to finish doing so. Come on, go ahead. Okay, while you were copying, you noticed that at the bottom of the slide that you were copying, you had not the same as plate appearance. Of course not. A plate appearance es comparecencia al plato, que no es lo mismo que veces al bate. Yo creo que el curso no es para explicar la regla de béisbol, pero para que usted entienda las palabras que se usan en inglés para referirse a eso. No es lo mismo comparecencia al plato que veces al bate. I think you know that very well. So then we have two terms, at bat and plate appearances. Let's go now on with this dialogue between Bill and Carlos. Okay, let's see. Next part of the conversation is, I would say, is focused now on specific players in Cuban baseball. All right? And then Bill says, some of your players are very famous in Canada. Bill is Canadian, so he's talking about, how famous some Cuban players are in his own country. Then he says, some of your players are very famous. And once again, I want to talk about how we pronounce the word famous. No hay O nada ahí. Usted ha escrito O, pero no suena O ni U por ninguna parte. Suena así. Famous. Okay? Famous. So then, some of your players are very famous in Canada. Third baseman Omar Linares was very well known to us in the 1990s. All right? So we're talking about somebody who is a legend in Cuban baseball, Omar Linares. And then Carlos replies by saying, yes, he's said to be one of the best players in the history of Cuban baseball. And I'm sure you all agree with Carlos, okay? Because Omar Linares was for many years the best we had. Oh, one of the best ones, just not to be absolute, right? Okay, so then he said to. Vamos a ver esa expresión que está subrayada. Ahí dice, yes, he said to be. Se dice Ajá. Se le conoce como, si usáramos otro verbo, he's thought to be. Y hay algunos ejemplos que vamos a tener ahora de cómo poder usar esta estructura, que es también una voz pasiva pero diferente. Una voz pasiva con características diferentes, porque aparece como sujeto de la voz pasiva el que recibe ahí la acción de ser dicho, de ser pensado, de ser considerado. Okay? So once again, some of your players are very famous in Canada. Third baseman Omar Linares was very well known to us in the 1990s. And then Carlos says, yes, he's said to be one of the best players in the history of Cuban baseball. Best players, one of the best players. We're using here the superlative in English. I think you know that. Let's see now some more examples that we have now of the use of this structure in English. All right? How do we use the passive voice in this particular context? Okay? So then, Omar Linares is said to be one of Cuba's best players ever. The same information given using some other words. Okay? One of the best players ever que jamás hayamos tenido, ¿verdad? Okay. Then number two, the Cuban team is expected to win all the games in this tournament. Se espera, fíjese que como usted lo va a traducir, usted diría arriba, se dice que Omar Linares, usted cambia el orden para traducir al español, se dice que Omar Linares es uno de los mejores jugadores en la historia del béisbol en Cuba. Number two, el equipo cubano, o se espera que el equipo cubano gane todos los juegos en este torneo. Se ha programado el juego para empezar a las 8:30 de la noche. Ahí no dice de la noche, pero normalmente a las 8:30 de la mañana no se juega béisbol en Cuba, por lo menos el campeonato nacional. Okay, so the game is scheduled to start at 8:30. Maybe you remember we used the word schedule some days ago in one of our lessons, and we said that there are two ways we have in English, to pronounce this word. One is the American way, which is scheduled, and then the way it is in England, which is schedule. Both are correct, only different ways we have. Like we say in Spanish, hablar. In Cuba and in Mexico, they use platicar. Just different words for the same, the same reality. In English, we have the same situation here, only that we have only a difference in pronunciation. It's the same word when you see it written down, but we have a different pronunciation for it, right? So then, these are examples of how we can use a structure. And why not? Let's talk about Omar Linares now. Here we have a picture of him, the kid. All right, good. So Omar Linares played third base for the Cuban national baseball team and for Pinal del Rio in 20 seasons of the Cuban National Series. 20 seasons. What would that be? Season meaning what? Temporada. No solamente las temporadas son en los seriales que se pasan por televisión, sino que también hay temporadas en el béisbol, temporadas en el atletismo. O sea, cada deporte tiene su propio sistema que se estructura en determinado periodo del año. Okay? So then, Omar Linares played third baseman for the third base for the Cuban national baseball team and for Pinal del Rio in 20 seasons of the Cuban National Series. And I'm going to give you now more information about him to introduce new language for you. Then, Linares' exceptional career shows statistics which include a 368 batting average, 404 home runs, 1,547 runs batted in, and 264 stolen bases. Vocabulario de béisbol muy propio del béisbol. Number one is the batting average. Average, promedio de bateo. The batting average es promedio de bateo que se calcula dividiendo la total de hits conectados por el jugador entre el número de veces al bate, que ya explicábamos qué cosas eran las veces al bate, que no son exactamente todas las comparecencias al plato. So then, Linares' exceptional career shows statistics which include a 368 batting average, 404 home runs, jonrones, 1,547 runs batted in. Runs batted in. ¿Qué querrá decir eso? Runs son carreras, batted in. Quiere decir que él hace que la carrera entre. Eso se llamaría en el béisbol carreras impulsadas. So then, runs batted in and 264 stolen bases. Bases robadas. This is language that I'm sure you're going to appreciate a lot. Now you can talk about this in English with somebody, who's also able to speak this language and wants to talk with you about baseball. Next is he led the National Series in batting average 4 times. En promedio de bateo, he led the National Series 4 times. In RBIs, runs batted in, language I've just, taught here. And in walks 6 times. Walks is the same as what? Las bases por bola. Bases on ball, right? So then walks como caminar, and walks 6 times. So he was a very outstanding player, of course, Omar Linares. Now we're going to give you information. Vamos primero al profesor y después vamos a ir dentro un ratico al PowerPoint. Primero vamos a conversar un poquito con usted. You know that baseball, or baseball internationally speaking, has changed its structure in the last few years. We've had already the 2 World Classics, which we never had before, in which we have a combination of professional players and amateur players. They play together, and this is a very strong event. In the year 2009, there was the second, let's say, issue of the World Classic, and the information I'm going to give you now has to do with, the 2 teams involved in the gold medal game. And they were, as you know very well, Korea and Japan. The Japan won the first Classic, in which Cuba was second, and now in the second case, we have a game between Korea and Japan, who had some other games before, during the Classic, all right? So that was a final game, but before that game, they held a few other games, as part of the elimination process to get to the finals. The information I have here has to do with these 2 teams, Korea and Japan. So now you can look at the screen. At the beginning, you have there both teams. We're talking about Korea and Japan. When we say both, ambos. So, if I didn't tell you about this before, about Korea and Japan, you would not be able to understand, what's going on here. When we say both teams, is it Las Tunas and Villa Clara? No, we're talking about Korea and Japan. So then, both teams have benefited from excellent pitching. Okay? Have benefited from excellent pitching. I think you know what we're talking about. Similar words, as we do have in Spanish. And they're both throwing their hottest starters for the final, okay? They're throwing their hottest starters for the final. Starters, los abridores. Los abridores más importantes, los mejores abridores. Y fíjense cómo usan la palabra hottest, como más caliente. Un poco que le da la idea de que es los mejores deportistas del equipo, los mejores pitchers de ese equipo. So then, both teams have benefited from excellent pitching, and they're both throwing their hottest starters for the final. We're talking about the final game between Korea and Japan for the gold medal in the World Classic of baseball. So Korea, which won a coin toss Sunday night to be declared the home team. ¿Qué será coin toss? Usted conoce seguramente el significado de la palabra coin, que es una moneda. Pero el coin toss es como un sorteo que se hace lanzando la moneda al aire y entonces se decide, en este caso como se decide cuál de los 2 equipos es el que va a actuar como home club en español. It would be the home club in English, and that's important because if you're the home club, you're the last team to bat, and then you have maybe more chances of coming back if you're losing the game. So then, Korea, which won a coin toss Sunday night to be declared the home team, or the home club, it's the same here as the home team, goes with Jung Keung-bong. That's the name. Difficult to pronounce in any language. So do not judge my English, by the pronunciation of this name. So then goes with Jung Keung-bong, 2-0, 0.66 ERA, vocabulario que vamos a enseñar ahora. ERA, 3G, and then 2GS, then 13.2 IP in the Classic. What is this? You would say, what language is this? Is it mathematics or what? What are we learning here? Is it English or what? Esos son términos, son símbolos, simbología que se utilizan en el idioma que se utiliza para hablar del béisbol, para hablar acerca de el promedio de carreras limpias, los juegos en que ha tomado parte ese lanzador, los juegos que inició ese lanzador, y además de eso el total de innings que ha lanzado ese deportista, ese pitcher en el equipo. So then 2-0 gives you some information. 0.66 is another information, and I want you to copy this. Vamos a copiarlo porque hay un ejercicio que viene después en que usted tiene que usar esta información. Le doy entonces 1 minuto para copiarlo todo, le explico un poco más de vocabulario y entonces ahí vamos a hacer una actividad. Okay, so you also, I'm sure, copied the information about the Japanese pitcher, Mr. Hisashi Iwakuma, 0.73 ERA, 3G, 2GS, 12.1 IP. What is this? You're going to learn what it is, right? Let's see now the next slide. General information about the two teams. These two teams know each other as well as they know themselves. Look at this. Each other, themselves. Son palabras importantes de saber. Each other es uno al otro. And themselves, a ellos mismos. O sea, hay una relación aquí. These two teams know each other. O sea, los japoneses conocen a los coreanos y los coreanos conocen a los japoneses. As well as they know themselves. Tal y como se conoce cada uno a sí mismo, es decir, los coreanos a los coreanos y los japoneses a los japoneses. And all they did was find out more about each other in the first 4 meetings. So now we know that these two teams played against each other 4 times in this competition already. All right? So then all they did was just try to learn more about, the other team. Let's see now a task for you. Y esta tarea tiene que ver con lo que usted copió hace un ratico. How is this expressed in the text above? Where you had all these, funny things that you didn't know, what they meant. So, Hisashi Iwakuma won 1 game and lost another in the World Classic. How is that said? ¿Cómo se dice eso en ese texto que usted copió? He won 1 game and lost another one in the World Classic. That's information you had there. ¿Cómo se expresa? ¿Con qué número? ¿Cuáles de los números que estaban ahí? ¿Cuáles de esas letras representan esto? Estamos tratando de interpretar la información en el texto. Number 2 is John Kyung-bong earned an average of 0.66 runs per game. Los números lo ayudan un poquito a identificar. So, earned an average of 0.66 runs per game. ¿Ok? Tiene que ver con promedio de carreras limpias. All right. So, how do we say this in English? ¿Ok? Esas son 2 partes de la información que hay que buscar. Seguramente usted está buscando en su texto, en su libreta, y está tratando de identificar dónde aparece la información para el primero y cuándo aparece la información para el segundo. Hay más. Vamos a buscar ahora 2 elementos más. John Kyung-bong has played in 3 games, in 2 of which he has been the starting pitcher. You know what that means, all right? He's a pitcher. He's played in 3 games, but he started the game in 2 of them. How is that said there in this, let's say, context in the information that I asked you to copy a few seconds ago, right? So then, now, Mr. Iwakuma has pitched a total of 12.1 innings. That's some more information, all right? That you need to look for in the information I gave you, right? Vamos a ver ahora, porque como usted tiene eso escrito en su libreta, y lo único que tiene que hacer es identificar la información, esto que está en la pantalla ahora, no tiene tanto que copiarlo porque usted simplemente buscó, seguramente circuló, subrayó, le hizo una marquita para identificar la respuesta a cada uno de los 4 aspectos. Vamos a ver la respuesta. How is this said in the text above? Hisashi Wakuma won one game and lost another in the word classic. Then you saw there 1-1, so that means that he won a game and he lost another game. Number 2 is information about promedio de carreras limpias. And look at the ERA. Earned runs average. Es lo que quiere decir eso. Usted tiene la palabra earned arriba, está en el texto escrito, usted la saca de ahí ahora la E, una palabra que va después del nombre del coreano. La R quiere decir con carreras, runs que están ahí, y la A viene de average, que también está ahí. Ok? Then, next. Jung Kyung-bong has played in 3 games. There you have the 3G means 3 games, and then 2GS, 2 games started. Okay? And then Mr. Iwakuma has pitched a total of 12.1 innings, 12.1 IP. IP means innings pitch. Okay? So then, innings pitch. ¿Cuánto tiempo nos va quedando? Muy poquito. Ya vamos a estar como perfecto. En los 3 minutos que nos queda, vamos a ver entonces algunos elementos de idioma que están adicionales a la información que usted ya ha recibido, como por ejemplo, creo que les interesa mucho los últimos 2 de abajo. He struck out 7, ponchó a 7. Viene el verbo strikeout, que ya lo vimos anteriormente. Strikeout, pueden copiarlos todos, pero quiero hacer énfasis en los últimos 2 por problema de tiempo. And number 4, he cleared the fence. El famoso se llevó la cerca en nuestro argot del béisbol en Cuba. Vamos a ver entonces el resumen de la clase de hoy. We have today talked about the use of the passive voice to talk about baseball. Then we have also learned a vocabulary items belonging to baseball as well. And also we have discussed today the use of some acronyms. ¿Qué quiere decir acronyms? Esos son como siglas que se utilizan en el béisbol, como en toda la esfera de la vida, no solamente en el béisbol, pero hemos hablado solo de ellas. Some acronyms used in baseball. All right? So, today, again, we have devoted our lesson to our national sport. I am sure most of you are happy that we've been talking about, you know, this passion of all Cubans. I'm sure we do have lots of struggle and, you know, lots of fights at home because, you know, somebody wants to watch a baseball game on TV and then somebody else is, you know, is eager to see the soap opera on television or maybe a film on another channel. So this is baseball. It's a Cuban passion. And I'm sure today, you know, by talking about this sport in English, you've been able to, you know, to get another insight into, you know, this sport that attracts so many people around the world. We have today also referred to a very important Cuban player, Omar Linares, who was for many years one of the best players in the world. And all of us remember him as the kid, as you know, as our third baseman who played and won and helped the Cuban team won so many games internationally speaking. Also language about, you know, baseball included the acronyms, you know, the expression at bat AB, and we also gave you information as to when somebody is not considered to have been at bat due to certain circumstances during the game. So these are things that we have also discussed today. Also regarding pitching, I mean, you learned today how to say in English carreras, promedio de carreras limpias. También aprendieron cómo se refleja en un texto escrito, por ejemplo, los juegos iniciados por un pitcher. And you also learned today how to name different positions that the players, you know, play during the game, like the pitcher, the catcher, the infielders, the outfielders, And we saw pictures of them, you know, of these players doing things. We also discussed here today, and I'm sure you copied and you were able to learn how to say bateo designado, which is, as I said, you know, during the lesson today, the designated hitter, and some other things having to do with this beautiful sport. I want to anticipate that we're going to have some more lessons about sports. Our next lesson, we're going to talk about, you know, a very important combination. That will be the combination of sport plus something else. But that's only for you to, you know, start anticipating. So I look forward to another lesson with you, and hope you have enjoyed today's, and then goodbye. See you later.